Hello, world. I'm Farsight, and this is Kerbal Space Program, where our first task today is to launch the camera vessel. This is a downrange D2 configuration with a camera on board. And as I have found out, the camera was not turned on when I scheduled this to be built. And unfortunately, the only way to take care of that is to turn it on now. So I'm going to open this up and turn on the planetary photography. And then we're going to close it back up. So I guess you have to wait for the pedals to get all the way open before you toggle. So here's our contract. Notice we are green all the way down, including the film camera. And the unmarked ones are ones we haven't done yet. And we'll monitor the science on the way up. And the planetary photography would say stopped if it were turned off. It's an invalid situation because it's in the wrong place. I worry about the reliability of the A4 engine. This does say 100% chance of ignition. Good. So let's light her up. There we go. Ports are usually a little bit unreliable at the early stages of their usage. And right now, this V2 is a major investment for this program. If this had failed, it would have set us back quite a ways. This is running the same code as the D1. So it's a simple little pitch follower where we're setting the pitch based on our altitude. I suppose I can throw it up on the screen real quick. Our engine has flamed out, so we're going to coast up to 80 kilometers. But the interesting stuff is down here. So altitude goes from Hmin to Hmax. As it does, the pitch goes from 90 down to 0. And we're using the square root of the altitude fraction so that it tends to move faster. As you change the altitude smoothly, our pitch moves faster earlier on because in reality, we're changing our altitude faster as time goes on. This kind of cancels out and gives us a nice smooth pitch. That pitch current where we are, we're going to limit our angle of attack, decide what direction we're steering, strip off the roll and set the roll in what we're actually steering so that we're not rolling, and wait until we're out of thrust and unlock throttle and steering. Everything else is asynchronous. So we got to 80 kilometers and discarded it, and we got to 100 kilometers and opened the pedals, and now our camera is running. We potentially have 3.6 units of science. Oh, and now that we're above 140, we have 6 units of science up here. So we've got almost 10 units of science we can get from the camera between that area from the Kármán line to orbit, or to top of the atmosphere, and then above the atmosphere. We're going to get a fraction of that in this flight. Just by chance, we ended up with a net roll, and when we opened up the pedals, it kind of stabilized it. So our camera is just kind of spinning around across the horizon, never looking straight down. Our apoapsis is 157.9 kilometers, and there it is. And now we're starting to fall again. It's really very little to see at this point. So I am going to raise our time warp, bring us back down into the atmosphere. And I'm going to time warp us again to bring us down where we close the pedals. Should be at the Kármán line if I remember right. Yes. And there we're closing the pedals. So now everything inside is protected. And we can watch the re-entry. We're not coming down from a long way up, but there still is going to be some heating. Notice the heavy bit is leading. There's our drogue chute. Now the drogue chute was calculated to slow us down just enough that the other chutes could be popped out. But you notice it's tilting the whole thing sideways. That's causing a lot of aerodynamic forces on capsule, slowing us down. So we're actually running slower than the parachute guy is configured to do, which is good. Slower means we are going to have an easier time of it. There's the final, and of course that's supposed to get us down to 80, it got us down to 60, and now there's our main chutes. And it's like 6 or 7. I think this was configured for 6. I may or may not have properly reconfigured it after adding the camera. With time warp on, hitting the water could be dangerous, so untime warp, and now let's recover the vessel. That will scrap the vessel and give us some money back for the parts and the part we scrapped, which I believe is some good size funds. So what did we get from the recovery? We picked up 0.6 science for photography and 1.3 for photography, and that was our science, 1.9 science. And we have a normal KSP termination. We have a recovery of a vessel after a suborbital flight. It's the second one, so we are getting less science for it. We have all the parts that we recovered. So we got 627 funds from the parts that we recovered from the water. And we are ready to go. So the next steps are reconditioning and doing more science. So I have not pre-decided what we're going to do next. I'm going to go over to my notes here, and I'm going to mark that we have done the first low space film return. So what have we got? Most of these are the same that I looked at last time. We could do another low space film return, which would get us another 63. That's actually quite a lot. So if this is the best thing we can do with our D complex, we're going to do it. We may be overqualified for this mission, but maybe we overestimate our qualifications. Okay. So what else could we do? We have some downrange launch vehicle development. We've done the intermediate one once. And intermediate now says 500 units of sounding rocket payload, downrange 150. So this is the same one. And the current reward is at 180%. So this is also a really good reward. The difficult one is an even better reward, 240 kilometers downrange. So this one is also good. Before we commit, though, have we finished some science? We have not yet finished the post-war materials science, so we do not have our good tanks for another 47 days. And all of the really good contracts require those tanks for our upgrades. Take a look at where we are. Oh, suborbital trajectory and return uncrewed with a parachute. I do want to do that with a sounding rocket, and that will require a sounding rocket with better tanks. And these are a long way out. And this is low space biological experimentation that requires science that we have not done yet. It requires the early tracking system science. We're making really good progress. Those space programs last for 6 years, and we are only a year in, and we're already just steaming through them. So I think at this point what we want to do is increase our reputation. I think the best way I can see of doing that is to do either a downrange distance launch vehicle development or another camera return mission. Let's see, low space film return. 150 kilometer altitude and downrange 400. I'm pretty sure we cracked 150 kilometer altitude on that one. I think. I didn't write down what we hit. Oh, I didn't write down how high we went. So I don't know if we could do this one. I'm going to have to do a sim to check that. I didn't actually look because I didn't think it was important. Okay, so since we may or may not be able to do the camera, but we certainly can do this one. I'm going to do a quick sim to check. And this will be D1. I'm going to pause it real quick. If we can't do it, I'm going to just wait for... I'm going to not do it until I can get the tanks. I could upgrade the engine here, but without the fuel tanks, that's really different. So we're going to pause this while I do. Okay, the sim ran. This is actually the camera, so I didn't see the contract complete, but I did notice that the camera, the apoapsis, the maximum altitude was 157 kilometers. We need 150 kilometers for the camera to space. So we could do the second low space film return mission. But we're also going to look at D1. See if we can do the other mission. And again, I'm going to pause this while I run the simulation. Simulation complete, and D1 is capable of running either of the downrange distance LV development contracts. So let's pick a contract. Pick the one that gets us the best reward. We're looking for reputation. So, LV Intermediate currently pays 81 with 4. I'm not sure what we can spend the confidence on other than compressing the space programs, but 81 stars or 129 stars or 63 stars. So let's do this distance launch vehicle development difficult. Now this is going to require taking our 500 units of sounding rocket payload up to 140 kilometers and downrange 240. And the D1 craft barely cracks 140. It's just above 140. We're going to accept that. And we need to build us a D1. Okay. So the D1 is going to finish here in March, just after we have finished getting the better tanks. So when we get the better tanks, I want to queue up a sounding rocket with better tanks and all of that. So let's go build that. I think I've designed the S2 already. So this is the S2. Notice it has some things added to it. We've got a decoupler. We've got parachutes. We've got a payload of 75 liters worth. And that allows us to do the following. We should be able to do altitude sounding rocket, intermediate and difficult. Those are 80 and 130 kilometer altitude with the 75 liters of payload. This rocket is capable of 160. That's what you get when you get the better tanks. Important thing is this is the high pressure aluminum fuselage. We will not be able to start building this until the science takes off. We are also able to do the suborbital trajectory and return, which is the critical mission for the space program. The intermediate and difficult ones, those are just kind of, you do those to get a little extra resources, a little extra reputation as you do it. But when we can do the actual contract, which is suborbital trajectory and return, which is 140 kilometer altitude with a chute, which this one can do, even with the payload, it can do it. That's the one we're going to go for this. And which contract we have accepted is going to depend on which rocket finishes first. But like I said, we can't do anything with this rocket until that science finishes. So it's a rocketry race. The warp to complete the reconditioning. And yes, we're going to end up with both of our launch complexes doing work. Well, what does our budget look like? Okay, we're low on funds, but we are accumulating 1,600 funds per month. So now let's wait for the materials science to finish. Okay, and now I can start the S2 rocket get that building. So we're going to have both of our launch complexes building rockets now. I hope this doesn't cause us to go broke. Let's see here. We have integration info. Show the management terminal. We're at LCS. Bring this guy up. And here's the tooling. So we need to tool the high pressure aluminum fuselages for this guy. When we do, it will bring our integration time down to 20 days and our rollout time down to 1 day, 9 hours. The tooling cost is 1,800 Kerbucks, which will come out of our credit. So that's done. Go to plans. I'm going to add S2 to our plans. We need to unlock the part. And we actually need to refurbish the LC, because it doesn't have the right fuel for the upgraded engine. Fortunately, LCS, we can modify LCS. And I believe this adds the new fuel and keeps the old fuel. So yes, ANFA 22 and ANFA 37 are both there. Good. Modify. All engineers have been unassigned. They will be reassigned if available. There. At this point, I don't believe we are going to build S1s ever again. And in fact, I'm not going to remove the S1, but I'm going to remove these special parts. Let's turn some of this off. Well, I no longer have to have S1N, S1S. These are just S1 pointed different directions. We can delete those. There we go. So S2 is here. We're not going to be able to actually start building it yet. We can't switch to LCS until it is done. So let's go back out. Our next thing with S is going to be 1 day, so 2 days from now. Got it. Boom. Now we can do the rest of the sounding rocket. So management. And here. So we are all tooled up. We're still budget positive. Plans and staff. Make sure LCS is staffed up. Make sure it is selected here. And we can put S2 on our build list. Now S2 is actually going to finish just before D1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get us moved forward. Oh, let's go deal with the contracts now before we start fast forwarding. So, times are estimates. Let's fast forward until he is on the launch pad, and then we'll accept contracts appropriately. We're rolling out S2. So we are ready to launch S2, so we need to have the proper contract for S2. It's not the distance LV. It is reach a suborbital trajectory and return uncrewed. So this is 140 kilometers with a parachute. We also happen to have a payload with us just because it's efficient to just build that same design rocket, which can do several missions. Oh, the button up there to switch to the admin building. And back to mission control. How about that? I didn't see that button earlier. Oh, and we've got all of this stuff. What do these do? The JPL plus 10% to science, avionics, and electronics research speed while increasing 10% funds for vessel purchase and launch. So more expensive, but faster science, avionics, and research. Tempting. So Douglas increases material science, but slows down the rocketry. Bell is flight research. I don't think I'm going to hire any of these guys. Okay, we're done there. So we are ready to launch this dude. Let's drop a hard save. 1952, March 23, 03, 24, 32 UTC. This is S-2-1 launch. And I am going to, again, freshen up KSP. I'll be back, and if this is the end of the YouTube episode, then hey, go have a good time, and I'll see you in the next one.